And here's my attempt at the expression. What up, viewers? What up, what up? Calc Soups here, and welcome to The Friend Zone, a monthly video game show where I discuss the latest games with my friends. Today we'll be discussing a title that won 4 video game awards back in 2019 and released a final cut this year on March 30th. We're talking about Disco Elysium. We'll be starting off, as we usually do, discussing what we were expecting and how to describe the game. We'll be talking about the RPG system because that's really where you start, is in character creation. We'll talk about gameplay. It's definitely a narrative heavy game, so we'll be talking about that. The world and the characters within it. We'll talk about any kind of replay value, and then we will end with our final thoughts. So without further ado, let's jump in and introduce, you know him, you love him. Here is Steven.
Hey, hey. Quippy, quip. How's
Nailed
it
it. Nailed it. Perfect. Wonderful now. So we're hopping in and talking about Disco Elysium. Very excited to be talking about this because there's kind of a lot to decompress. There is definitely a lot of games packed into this.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No. So I guess I was just gonna hop in and say, kind of, I don't know if there was too much. I mean, with a kind of smaller indie title, I don't know if there was too much like marketing or anything. But what kind of initially, what kind of initially pulled you into the game?
It was I had really only heard of it based on like some recommendations from Kevin from some friends.
Okay.
And he had mentioned that it was kind of a cool system where like your skill points talk to you, and that sounded really interesting. So then when I finally got a computer that could run it, I got it last year for I guess around this time last year. And then I just really, I don't know if it was just like the right time in like,
yeah, I guess if you got it June.
Yeah, I really got into it and just like really sunk deep down inside of the game. So I had heard about it. It was on my wish list, and I think it was like a Steam summer sale or something.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, I'll grab this. And then just really amazed with. I think the thing that is really amazing about Disco Elysium is that and maybe you'll agree with this, maybe you won't. It really feels the most like out of any game that you're playing a tabletop RPG.
Yeah, I definitely. Yeah.
In the sense where like you had not only do you have skill points and skill checks and things, but you really do get the feeling that anywhere you go, you're pushing story. It's not kind of like at no point does it really feel like there's a dead end that that you've hit where there's like no other way to get the information. There's always something where you can like you can always, every time you hit a wall, it's like, okay, well, I'm just going to go and investigate this another way. And it really sometimes does feel like you have somebody sort of like pulling the strings to kind of like help guide you in the right direction.
This was initially put on my radar with like, again, like I said, the Game Awards. Like I knew it swept the Game Awards that year. Like, so like it was, I don't think I'd seen anything. I think it was released like October 2019, so it was like, right in the middle of a bunch of big games, and then yeah, it kind of swept in. I think it got the most Game Awards that year, actually. I think with 4.
It won a BAFTA.
Oh yeah,
which is kind of a big deal.
Yeah, so that was like initially when it was on my radar. I think it was exclusive to to PC at that point, like when it first came
Yes.
out.
Mm-hmm.
And then yeah, so then I think, and then I think a lot of us, or at least when I was talking to people, like it was definitely like waiting for, I don't know, this final cut. Just kind of, I think they announced it really early, and so like people have just kind of been waiting for this like final cut. And I think that's what initially drove like, hey, let's select this for the games for the Friend Zone game this month, because like the final cut is here. I think we debated
Yeah.
back in March or April, like what game should we be playing, and this was definitely something I wanted to always return back to.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, maybe something that we can add because I think it's really interesting that it seems to have a little bit of a finishing problem.
Ooh, okay, I could
Which is
definitely
maybe something that later on we should talk about because it
definitely.
seems like there's a lot of there's a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, I started it and then I haven't, I've started it a couple of times and then I haven't finished it, which I think is really interesting because I too have started playthroughs that I haven't finished,
Yeah.
um, which I think is kind of interesting notion, which is like, well, finish it, like what about this game sort of prevents people from finishing it. um so yeah, I guess looking at the things, I'll talk a little bit about. I really like the skill system. I think it's really
Yes.
unique in the way that the skills kind of talk to you. And the thing that, because I was just playing it a little bit before we started to just kind of remind myself.
Yeah.
Some of the things are like, I look at some of the skills and it's like I've done two playthroughs,
Okay.
two in, well, I guess two. I did a half one that then um
You
midway
want
through
to
the
finish?
game I hit a glitch,
Uh
and it had been like several hours since I had saved
oh.
naively. um and so I was like, well, fuck. But
Yeah.
I already knew that I wanted to play through it a second time with different skills, so I redid my skills
Hmm.
and started over because it was like, if I'm gonna start over, I might as well start over. Then I finished that playthrough all the way through, and then I've started a new one now. So I just finished day 2 and I'm into day 3 of my
Okay.
third playthrough, um, which is sort of my like, okay, now that I know the answer playthrough, what are some things that, and
Yes.
also to like finish some of the things that I didn't do. So I guess this is full spoilers, right?
Yo, yeah, yeah. This is full
Okay,
spoiler. So
cool.
yeah, I think
Um,
the first thing that you interact with is this like skill system, which I went in expecting somewhat of an RPG. Like I didn't really know, obviously, to the depth of what the game would be like, but like it makes you start off like creating a character, right? And so I didn't want to feel like bland and like, but the first thing I selected of like, because I went into it like I do with most RPGs. I went into it like, how do I want to play? What is my character going to be like? How do I want to approach it? And I was like,
mhm.
okay, I want to do this the way I'm going to make the decisions I want to make, like as if I were this guy. Although I think that might have been the wrong way to start, because there's you know, uh, Harry definitely has his own set of characteristics that might or might not jive with the way I would
Yeah.
usually say things. So it's like there's
So
definitely like a character there. But
it's
yeah.
really interesting in a way where like other RPGs, like say Mass Effect, where you have sort of like a good guy answer and a bad guy answer, and you
Hmm.
kind of have to decide which one. Like if you're role playing in some of those games, a lot of the time it's like, well, you either pick like or do you pick the snarky answer? Do you pick the,
Hmm.
role playing in those kind of games? A lot of the time it becomes you as a conduit for like you inhabiting this character rather than this character inhabiting you.
Yes.
Excuse me, it's more like the character like inhabiting you. Like, Commander Shepard is making the choices that Steven would make rather than Steven making the choices that he thinks that Commander Shepard would make.
Yes.
And the thing about Disco Elysium, that like, because the first playthrough I try to like, my instinct is to sort of be a good guy, is to be nice, is
Sure.
to like not do the like, don't do the drugs, like try to
Yep.
do a good thing. And then the second time around, it's like, well, sometimes there's mechanical reasons. Like I just
Yeah.
in what I was playing right here, I hit a wall because I dumped intelligence on this build, and so
Okay.
I had got locked at when I'm confronting the Hardy Boys. I got locked out of a rhetoric check. So it's
Okay.
like, okay, well, I got to go get some cigarettes. to raise my intellect,
Oh,
so then I can put another point in it, so then I can retry that
okay.
rhetoric check.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting that you end up making different. It really makes you, by one, just how good the writing is, and
Yes.
two, by having some of the options be so weird, it makes you, rather than go like, okay, I'm not playing me, I really got to try to figure out like
Who this guy
Harry is a
is. Yeah.
person.
Yep.
This isn't like a blank a conceit to be a blank slate where
I
like
mean,
you
it
can make
starts off
Harry
that way,
whoever you
right?
want. Yeah, yeah. On the first playthrough, it definitely feels that way,
Yeah.
but then over time, especially through a second playthrough, you realize how many things are like, oh shit. So that's hinting, like that's hinting at really this story that um I think is really heartbreaking in a way, about like this
Mm-hmm.
man whose life has sort of been over for like 20 years.
Yeah.
But even before he was a cop, like, it's about this like retired gym teacher who can't get over the fact that his wife has left him,
Mm-hmm.
and really coming to like sort of realizing that this cycle is like, yeah, you remembered who you are, but now that you've remembered it, I mean, depending on
Yeah.
how you play Harry, I think a little bit
Yes.
of it is will he go off the deep end again and forget everything the next night? Like it's
Or
clear that the implication is that the reason he went on the bender that he did, that sort of started the whole memory loss, is that
yeah.
he sort of realized this event and crashed his car on the ice and
Yeah. Or tequila sunset.
yeah, tequila. Yeah, or my favorite of the names that you can get, Raphael Ambrosia de Casteau.
Oh, yes. I think. Yeah.
Is a name that you can insist upon for a while.
I do. Yeah. I definitely liked like the competitive nature of like the skills, because they interact in a way where it's just like, logic tells you this happened, but authority steps in and is like, no, you want to be cool, you want these kids to
Right.
think you're cool, and like
Well, it's such a good story moment
yeah.
when Volition basically
Yes.
steps in as like, all those skills, everyone's lying to you, everyone's compromised.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's like, oh shit, they all get in,
Yeah.
fights with each other. And I
Yes.
mean, the skills really take on characters, and it's like, do you
Yeah.
want to embody and that's the really cool thing I think about the skill system, is I look at it and there's all those like hidden checks that you don't know you're making,
Yes.
right? Where it comes
Yes.
up as like success easy, and I'm like, oh shit, if I had a bunch of, is there like a hard Half-Life check that I've been missing the whole time?
Yeah.
Like, do I
Seriously.
need to do it? But and for me, like, I think that's partly why this game has appealed to me so much, is I really like to like dig deep in there. Like, I really played the shit out of Until Dawn because I
Mm.
really wanted to like open up all the story possibilities, which is like, is it
Yes.
possible to save all the people? Is it
Yeah.
possible to like, what are the hidden checks that I'm missing? What happened? What's the thing if I have this character here? I'm really interested in that. And so this is like, oh god, do I have to do a playthrough now? Like, I've never really had, could I, like, if I say max to skill to like 8 or 9, are there like
Mm-hmm.
some like really bonkers checks?
Oh, sure.
um, did you make it to the island?
I didn't. So that was the one thing that, yeah, I will say that unfortunately I did not beat the game, even though I really wanted to. But like I had gotten to day 4, and then I don't know if it was a PlayStation issue or the game issue or what it was, but I did lose somehow in the year of our Lord 2021. I lost my save file. So
That's crazy. I can't
yeah,
believe that.
I'm pretty upset about it, but like I think the reason it was taking me so long, because I put like 30 hours in, the reason that it took me so long is because I was doing every nook and cranny and not continuing what I thought was the main quest until I had like
And
done all the side stuff.
well, and that's kind of, I think, the first way you play it is,
Yeah.
while, and the way that I did too, is like you really examine everything, and then you sort of realize, okay, a lot of this, there's really a bit of a it feels like there's all these branching paths, but it does like
Yeah.
crunch you back into one, and the mystery isn't necessarily solvable.
Sure. Yeah, I was yeah.
Although, again, playing it through a second time, you do really realize like how much foreshadowing there is in just like when your skills are talking to you, it's like
Yeah.
all these little details where you're like, oh, there's all these little pieces that I've that I've missed. So on the
Mm-hmm.
island there's this door, and
Okay.
it's a stuck door, and the game heavily implies that it is impossible to open.
Oh no,
That
is that on an island or?
yeah, it's on the
So it's on the northern side of the west
oh, the
half
fishing
of the
village.
the
Yeah.
fishing village. Okay, that
Yeah,
I
excuse me,
yes.
it's not on the island.
Okay,
I
so
think
yeah,
it feels like it might lead to the island, but I'm
sure.
also fairly convinced that you just can't open it. But goddamn, am I gonna try?
Oh sure, yeah. As soon as I get the crowbar, I'm like, I'm just like trying to open everything that I ever haven't
Yeah.
been able to open. It's like I've got this super crowbar, so I've got to get everything. I got to
Right.
try it on everything.
Get the super crowbar. Get the
Yeah.
armored gloves.
Yes.
Get
Yes.
the yeah.
Yeah.
That's my two goals for this newest run: is get the full set of armor and
Yeah.
get the and try to open that door. But there's this thought. So the other thing about the RPG system, which I didn't interact with as much the first time around, but I'm finding is actually the most brilliant thing in the game, is the thought cabinet system.
Yeah. I put a lot of points like anytime because I had like you have like 20 thoughts, or at least I did by like where I was. So less than like putting skill points in things. I usually was like unlocking a thought cabinet.
That's what I have. That's what I've been doing more in my second playthrough, and it really is more interesting because it's sort of like, do you want to level up your skill or do you want to put points into a feat? Which it's sort of a gamble as what. So the thought cabinet, just for anyone who hasn't played the game, is maybe listening to this, is instead of spending a point to raise a skill, you can. There are these opportunities where a thought will come up, which is like either an ideology for you to internalize, or like essentially like an idea about yourself that you can internalize, spend a skill point to sort of like add it. And then then you have to like sort of level up XP to sort of internalize it. And while you're thinking about the thought while you're internalizing it, like your stats change, like, or certain
usually to a
perks will
detriment,
happen.
right? Like
Usually it's bad.
yeah.
And then once you've internalized the thought and you've gained enough XP while you're thinking about that thought, it'll complete, and then it'll like boost your stats or give you an ability, or like I have one where I gain experience for saying communist things.
Yes.
Or,
Oh my yes. Yeah.
for being, or there's one for all four of the ideologies. All those. You can be hobo cop, or you can be super cop, or cop of the apocalypse.
Yes.
And they give you new dialogue options and things like that. And the game like really opens up the way that you do those feats. And again, like I'm so curious, like what have I missed by not, there's a huge list of thoughts that's like, how do those change the game? How did they and so anyway, back to the whole point about the door that I was going to originally make. There's a thought in the thought cabinet called "one more door," which is like the thought, which is like, there's only one more, can you open it? Kind of thing. It's like that's sort of been my mantra for this playthrough, is like one more door. Like striving for the impossible, and it might be totally impossible, but
I forget how you unlock it. It's like you're just talking to someone and they're telling you probably about like the last king of Revachol or something, and it's like oh yeah, his scepter, like some dialogue option takes you to like,
yes, right,
okay, his scepter's hidden out there somewhere, and it's like
the statue, his throne room.
Yes. And like all of a sudden you're thinking about, and you're like, okay, you end the conversation with whoever you were talking to, and then it's like, hey, do you like opening doors? Like, is that your thing? Do you think maybe the scepter is somewhere out there? And it's like maybe if I invest time in this thought cabinet, I can now,
go find this
scepter maybe, or yeah.
Did you ever find the scepter?
No.
I'm convinced it's out there, but I don't know.
I'm pretty sure.
The other thing that, at least when I was playing it, over the last year, it's been built up, but there's hardly any like wiki information for anything.
Yeah.
It's since expanded a little bit, but there aren't like all that many guides and walkthroughs. So you kind of have to like bumble around and guess and check
Mm-hmm.
things. There isn't like, like when I was playing God of War last night, and it's like, where do I find this Valkyrie? Why can't I find it? And it's like, oh,
Uh-huh.
here we go. Here's the route to it. And
Yeah.
it also tells me what the best like weapons and armor are probably to use against it.
Yep.
And that does not exist yet, or at least it
No.
didn't
Yeah.
when I was trying to play Disco Elysium. I was like, sometimes you try to like look up, like, okay, wait, if I make this choice, or is there a way
Mm-hmm.
to beat this without? And there's just like no information. You're like,
Yeah.
okay,
No.
I guess
Like,
I gotta.
I mean, much to my chagrin, where it's like, okay, I failed the first speech check talking to the girl outside your, apartment first time.
Uh
And it's
huh.
like she just goes into the room and it's like, okay, like knock, and there's like a bunch of story points where it's like heavily implying that like someone else might have more information, and I'm like, it's got to be the girl in the room. That's the only person on this entire freaking island that I haven't interacted with except for the first time. And I'm like, if I had enough electrochemistry, would like that have made it easier? And like, should I have
Yeah.
just like slept with her right up the, or if that was even on the table,
I
which
want
it
to have
seems.
some fuck.
Yeah, it was like, what is going on? Yeah, so
Yeah,
yeah,
so
it's
like all the branching paths and the not being able to know, I think is
yeah,
again the other thing that makes it really feel like, um, uh,
and there's like there, even when it's not a check, like the game takes its time to like have your thoughts, or have your things say like, this is really important, do you think this is what killed the guy? And it's like, no, like, he's got a bunch of bumps on his chest. Do you think this is what was fatal to him? And like, I assume that Kim would think less of me if I was like, yeah, he died from a rock being thrown at his arm. Like, it's like,
right.
it's like, no. And it's like, take time, think about it. And when I first was when I was first on the radio with Sylvie, I was like, somehow I had gotten stuck in this, got stuck in this like narrative path where like, I just assumed that Sylvie and Gart were an item, and then like all of a sudden now all of a sudden, and then I get stuck. Sometimes there isn't choices, and it's like yeah, you and Gart probably don't want to be in the same room because of the time you fucked or something. And it was like, I don't want to say that. My guy's like sorry cop, but like somehow I got into this narrative
Are you
path.
sorry, cop?
Yeah, somehow I got into this narrative path where I'm just like giving Gart eyebrows, and like I'm like, yeah, oh god. And the game definitely does not pull any punches when it talked about, oh, what was it, penis carousel or something like that. It's like, yeah,
I have no idea what
I
that
think
is.
somehow I got into that, and somehow my character's like, yeah, I used to interact with penis carousels all the time, and I'm like, what are we talking about anymore?
I
Oh
have
my
no
god.
idea. Yeah, I really like I really like, things like, you say penis carousel. I really like just how interesting the world and the writing is in general,
Oh yeah.
because the world feels so familiar. It feels like post-Soviet, like Soviet bloc
Uh-huh.
something, but there are some things that are so um that feel like so much like our world that you feel like you understand them, and then there's just a little twist to them in a way that's like
Mm-hmm.
super interesting, like the fact that they don't really have computers, but they do a
No.
bunch of it's all like radio computer.
Uh-huh.
It's all like radio based with like operators, and they're trying to build an MMO RPG without
With
without
an
computers,
with
all
an
with like
yes. With a
radio stations,
and
and
dial-ins, yeah.
the whole idea with like the fact that these aren't really continents, but they're separated by like literally some kind of black void
Oh my
that
god.
is eating the world. Did you do any of the stuff with like with the um the black hole in the church?
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, oh man. Yeah, the whole pale stuff, cuz like that's really when the first time you like interact with the world, it's like the woman in the wheelchair was like, "Hey, can you describe how this world, what's up with this world? Do you know who you are?" and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
And it's like I got the first one right cuz I said like this is my name or my badge number or something like that, cuz I had actually like interacted with my inventory. And the second one was like, "Yeah, what kind of government do we have?" And I was like, I don't know, probably like from what little information I knew about the world, I was like, I don't know, probably some robot determining like how everybody works or something. And she was like, yeah, that's right. And she gives me like her pen or something. And I'm like, oh my God, I am not in Kansas anymore.
Yeah, it's a super and the fact that like all the sort of I think it's really interesting when they sort of talk about race and stuff that
Ooh.
they've sort of obscured it between these like it's not a one-to-one analog for like
Yeah.
who is what kind of thing, and I
Mhm.
think that that's super interesting because it kind of lets you talk about some of these things while divorcing it a little bit from sort of like any any like necessarily real world allegory, but it's still very close.
Yeah, and like they're pretty delicate about it. Like I know some people are just outright racist against,
Yeah,
but like
Measurehead and
yeah, and like the freaking the newspaper salesman or whatever.
the
But
racist
yeah,
lorry driver. Yeah.
yeah, but um, although calling Measurehead out was I think that was like full circle. Like that was really when you
Oh,
finally
did you
yeah,
go all the way and did you somehow refute his
no, I couldn't figure. I think that might have been a
oh,
passive
but you
check.
decked him.
But yeah, no, I didn't punch him. I just like talked.
Oh.
I did actually. I never got behind him because he's got like that box behind him. So I
Oh,
never got
interesting.
past him, but I could still like talk my way to him. I don't. But I had gotten to Everart without having to interact with him.
Did you go through Kuno's secret?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah. That's what I had to do on my second route. But I think it's so interesting that you could
yes,
just bypass it if you're just like, yeah, I'm a racist too.
yes. It's just like, and that was a little bit of ambiguity because it was a conceptualization check, but it was really easy. And like I'd already interacted with the Everart and like talked about like, hey, you talk about this like racial purity, but you report to a white guy, and he's like, whoa, like let's calm down and like why are you being racist? And I was like, oh shit, am I racist now?
Yeah, I really do want to play at some point like a fascist racist playthrough just to
Ooh, yeah,
just to see if that makes things easier, if it makes it harder.
yeah,
If it, and it's really so I can't say enough about how much I love all the story and the choices of that game. I
yeah.
really think that there's a really touching sort of moment at the end because there's this whole like subplot where like the cryptozoologist is looking for a
Yep.
cryptid,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
it's like all loony. It has side quests written all over it.
Yep.
And then like out of fucking left field at the end of the day, it's like a fucking psychic cryptid comes up to you and is
Mm.
talking. And at that point in the game, you're like, that moment really like hit me. I think just maybe being like a little bit of like hope in the world that
Mm-hmm.
like even some of the I guess it's just the idea that like even some of the crazy people like there's like Harry who is like totally spent and out of his mind that there's like potentially some redemption for him
Mm-hmm.
like and because like Kim and I we in my playthrough at least we were very tight by the end
Yes.
so he came to work with us at the end
Yeah, it
at
definitely
my
felt like
station.
it definitely felt like it was building up like this guy's gonna be and like I had just gotten the thought cabinet idea of like, hey, Kim wears a bomber jacket, like what I wonder if this means something and like the whole time I think it was the aces high,
Oh,
aces low moment. I think that's what triggers it was like, hey, we shot down the body. And
oh, you shot down the body, very nice.
yes, yeah. So I shot down the body, and it like Kim gives you a high five, and then you do like an ace, or I guess it's aces high and aces low,
Oh,
and like
uh-huh.
he does the aces low, and it's like, hey, you feel, Kim wears a funny uniform, and like you really think like he concluded your aces high, aces low thing, so like maybe you two are pals, and you should ask him about his jacket. And I was like, okay, I'll put a thought point in whatever's going on there. So it definitely felt like it was building up like you're going to be friends with Kim and yeah, something's
Yeah, but like
yeah.
so there's the moment where like you're both staring at this cryptid and it's like oh and you know you're thinking like oh god this is another hallucination and Kim's like no I see it too
Oh.
and it really like it really hit me at I don't know, just something about it really hit me at the core of this, like, because then you have this conversation with the cryptid for a minute, and I really would like recommend,
Yeah.
because even after like you have solved because it's sort of like right after you solve the mystery that you kind of do all this, and that kind of
Yeah.
ends the game. Oh man. And then the way that, like, because so he has the two ampoules for his cool camera device, you
Yes.
know
Yes.
and if you have that second one and Kim is still around, you can get that you can get a photo of the cryptid,
Oh yeah.
like, for proof. And it's like, oh, but I know, like, in the shootout, because so there's a shootout in the game, like,
Uh-huh.
I'm very curious what happens, because Kim can die.
Oh, interesting.
Kim can die in
Yeah.
that shootout, and
Okay.
you can get Kuno to be your, like,
Like
new partner.
underling or something. Okay.
Yeah, as you go to, like, the island. So I'm very curious to
Interesting.
try to, like, do a playthrough to see, like, what happens when Kuno is there.
Yeah, sure.
Like, and
But
because you
yeah.
can, like, redeem Kuno and stuff, and there's some side quests I know that, like, I
Yeah.
haven't done that are through him. And so yeah, there's just so much, like,
Yep.
so many branching paths. And even though, like, the story, like, there's only one solution to who the killer is, and
Sure.
there's only, like, one narrative the game can play, but how you get there, which I think is sort of like with what the fun of tabletop RPGs is, where, like, the end is like what the session we played today, like, the end was already determined. You're going to beat
Yeah.
the monsters and learn the truth, but, like,
Yeah.
it's the interesting nature of, like, how you get there, where, that makes it an interesting story.
Yeah, and I
And
think
that's what I think this
yeah.
game does so well.
I think the game is smart enough, like, and typically, like, even an RPG is branching linear kind of stories, but I feel like the game is definitely smart enough, or the RPG system is, like, deep enough. Like, if I talk to someone and, like, found out a piece of information by, like, digging through their narrative tree and take that to someone, like, we'll either skip some narrative that I don't need, or, like, the reaction of, like, me talking to this person before this person would trigger something to make it different.
Yeah.
So, like, I bet there's definitely, like, a butterfly effect, or at least a lot of very branching stuff that maybe narrows to the final answer or something. But
that was something I really liked, is the game does a really good job of making you feel, because sometimes in, like, detective video games, it doesn't matter what order you talk to the people in, you're going to
yeah.
get the same information anyway. But Disco Elysium really does a good job of, like, if I talk to this person first, I'm going to get, like, before I confront these people, I should make sure that I have all the facts, because it's going to go better if I have all the facts. Like, especially with some of those checks, those white checks, where,
Yes.
it's like, if you've done these things, you have a better chance of making that check. And you can, and if you fail it, then you have to, sort of either
Yeah.
invest a skill point, or go learn some new information to unlock it to try again.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing that I liked about. I was, again, why I would like, because I would usually attempt, like, even if it was pretty far fetched, like, I would still at least attempt it. Because, like, my best roll was, like, my first time I interacted with Everart, and you're like, this chair looks, so, like, some check, like your perception check or something's like, this chair looks extremely uncomfortable. And so I sit down in it, and it's like, it's meant to make you, like, off-putting and, like, feel weird. And, like, it was a long shot, like, 20% chance to like sit in the chair and just, like, brace yourself through the pain. And I succeeded, and I was like, oh my god. So, like, Everett's, like, trying to do his deal making stuff, and he's, like, trying to make me feel all uncomfortable, and I'm like, no, I don't feel uncomfortable. Like, I'm a badass.
I love this chair.
Yeah, this is the most comfortable chair I've ever sat in. You're like, oh,
that's
okay.
awesome.
Yeah,
that's so good. Yeah,
but then that was another thing for, like, thought cabinets, is, like, all of a sudden after I, like, spent some time in a thought cabinet, it was like, and now all these checks are unlocked again. It's like, oh, sweet, I can go reattempt those, and now I probably have a better skill shot, or better shot at passing them.
And that was the way, I know, like, talking to Kevin, he was I was talking to him about it, and he was like, I feel really, I am not quite sure how I want to spend my points at the beginning of the game. And like, that's sort of, because there's so many skills, there can be a little bit of paralysis of like, God, where do I put this point?
Mm-hmm.
And I found my favorite way to do it, which is what I recommend everybody do, is just don't level up until you need to retry something, and then
Yeah.
put the skill point into it. Like hang on, hoard those puppies
Yep.
until you either find a new thought cabinet you want to do, or you want to put a point into into a skill. But then again, that means that I'm not like leveling up any uber skills.
Yes.
And who knows what kind of checks I'm missing in the dialogue, like what kind of weird tidbits.
Yeah, and I was definitely more of like a jack of all trades, where I was like, do I really want to invest like these? I mean, I don't. And now at the end of the game, I'm like, I don't mind investing 2 or 3 points in a single skill, but I was like pretty even across the board, and like put a point here or a point there, and like for the most part, I was like trying to put a point in everything before I like circled back to do like to make something better. But then it just turns out like or at least towards the end of the game, I was like, man, there are a lot of conceptualization checks.
Yeah, conceptualization.
Yeah.
Did you get to teleport?
I did not. No.
there's a check.
Oh,
I
no.
think it's a conceptualization check.
Interesting.
Where like it's to like get up a ladder or something onto the top of a building.
Interesting.
And you can, if your conceptualization, my first run through, it was high enough where he just like he believes that he teleports, and it's not conceptualization, it's one of the purple ones. It's one of the like the feeling. It's one of the feeling ones. But you like literally like the game implies that you think you've teleported, but in reality you just like walked over there.
Oh, interesting.
So I'm very curious, like what if there's any wild stuff for maxing out some of those skills. Which sort of makes me excited for if they had if they did a sequel with say a larger budget, like
sure
what they could do with some of these branching paths. What skill point is your favorite?
Ooh,
what skill is your favorite?
I mean, I started out selected into logic, and I thought I was surprised that didn't come up as much as I kind of wanted it to, because like a detective trying to deduce things. I mean, I never disagreed with what the game was like rolling, but I was like, I'm definitely not using logic too much, except for when I'm like reading a book, and it was like logically the next thing happening in this narrative was like this, and I was like, okay, great, like I now can like
that's hilarious.
But I really liked so with logic being somewhat of a dud in my opinion. I did invest a lot of points into like visual calculus, and it was
I put a lot of points into visual calculus.
Yeah.
My second run, when I was like, that was what got me excited enough to do. I was like, okay, I'm gonna just go visual calculus and see what it.
Yeah.
But my favorite skill is shivers. I love shivers.
Interesting. That was one of the ones like that, and Half-Light was like, I don't really understand what this is doing, and like. Yeah, I just haven't seen too much about it. Although I think eventually it comes up and it's like a big check.
Eventually you have to put a lot of points into shivers, which is kind of interesting. But shivers is just like getting vibes about the city. I think is so cool. Yeah,
and then eventually I hit a bottleneck where I needed a super high perception. And I was I was pretty okay with like pumping points into perception, because like I wanted to be very perceptive. So like I go into like I finally get access to Kuno's apartment, which has been locked for like the first half of the game.
Oh,
and, like,
yeah.
So I get in there.
I've never been in there.
Interesting. So then I get a random roll, and it's a perception roll, and it's like, hey, this place smells like beer, and you hear the faint whining of something or other, and so. It was like, oh, I wonder what's in here. And it's like, you smell booze everywhere. And I'm like, okay, now I'm starting to understand what Kuno's deal is.
Yeah.
and yeah.
Did you meet Kuno's dad?
You do. He is buried under a pile of clothes smelling of booze, and he won't wake up. So, he's just sleeping off a hangover. And like, although... The funny thing is, like, you could eventually, like, put your ear up to his mouth and, like, hear what he's saying, which I think was another perception check. and he's just like fucking pigs and he's just like snoring and like hating cops or something like that, and you're like, okay, this is where Kuno gets it. He's got a deadbeat dad who hates cops for some reason, probably because he's a drunkard, and like,
did you kill his dad?
No. I was like, hey, Kim, what can I do about this? And he's like, he's probably too poor to like go to the poorhouse or something like that. So I don't know if there's much we can do. And I was like, oh man. So I don't know if there was ever anything else I could do.
I think there is a way to kill Kuno's dad.
Oh, interesting.
Or to take him out or something somehow. Which I'm very curious about, like trying to find, where does that narrative path lead?
Well, the one thing I will say is that, and you probably played it both. Did you play the Final Cut, or have you only been playing?
Yes, no, I played both of them.
Okay.
Yeah, because they up on PC. The Final Cut was just an update.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, but I do have the PlayStation one on its way.
So I've been playing
someday.
So I played on PlayStation, and that was like some of the like negative stuff is just trying to play a traditional RPG, like definitely developed on a computer RPG.
Yeah,
with a PlayStation controller was a little.
I'm very curious to see how
a little
that plays.
Yeah, because like I'm trying to like, so you have to press X to like interact with things, and like I'm pressing, I think it's L1 to like highlight what I can interact with. But like when you get the bubbles, like the halo bubbles around your head, and you're like trying to select those, it's so weird because you're not moving a cursor around the map. You're like moving from interactable to interactable. And so I'm like trying to
that is weird.
So
I wonder how you do that.
So like rather than click on a door, I'm trying to click on the thought above my head, and so it does. I definitely think sometimes.
I definitely think the PC. I didn't have it. I played it on the PC, so I could see some of that. Because definitely a lot of the time it's nice to be able to just like click the bubbles. There's like bubbles all over the place.
Yep. I've actually got did I get an XP? I think one of my thought cabinets gave me an XP every time I clicked on one of those bubbles. And because my perception was high, like I'm like walking up and down the street and like just smelling like sewage and garbage. And I'm like, oh, there's an XP, there's an XP, there's an XP. I was like, oh, okay,
delicious.
Cool. Yeah.
Delicious.
Give me those points at a time.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I could have played this game if there wasn't the VO. Like, I don't know that I'm patient enough to have read some of the things that were spoken to me in this game.
I definitely will, sort of speed read through a lot of that stuff, even, especially now my second time through. But yeah, sometimes without the VO, it could get a little tedious sometimes, like, and so you just kind of would skim it to get the gist of it and then move on. So I definitely think the VO is a good
definitely
was a good move.
God, the world is just so crazy. So the first time you like interact with the world, or at least that I felt, was like talking to the lady in the wheelchair, and then you talk to the woman on the boat. Forget her name.
Oh yeah, Joyce.
And like somehow you get down this random rabbit hole where you're like, just tell me about the world. And so like I just like start hearing about everything that's going on, and like I think that's the first time you like understand what the Pale is, and and oh my god. And I remembered some of the details of like, I think there was a zombie apocalypse in this universe somewhere where like she was just like, there's like 100 years and like someone released this weird drug and it turned everybody crazy, and like half the population started eating the other half of the population.
I don't remember that.
And I was like this is the like almost Numenera-esque, where it's just like apocalypse after apocalypse after apocalypse, and then here we are. I'm like,
well, so one of the things that I love about this world is that this world is like, for 20 years these guys this is their RPG setting. Yeah, they're like tabletop RPG setting that they've been playing for like 20 years with each other. And so all those details could be something that like happened in one of their campaigns, and they've just like moved on. what there's rumors that they're going to make a tabletop RPG
Oh,
in the system.
I definitely think the system is well supported enough that it could just run a tabletop using it.
If they can find a way to do the the skill points the way that they
Yeah.
do, I think that'd be amazing. What's super interesting, so kind of along those lines, so they have like they've made like versions of of Kim's bomber jacket, and I think another one
Ooh.
that you can buy. But
Ooh.
what's interesting on the tag is let me find it. What's interesting on the tag is that it gives skill points on the tag.
Oh, that's great.
Like,
that was the one thing too about like the way I chose to play the game was like I didn't want to like save some scum it if I like missed a white save. I mean that was another good thing about the system too is like oh you knew a white save you could just recheck. So it's like let's just try it. If you fail, just come back when you've increased your skill,
Yeah,
which is again why I went for the more jack of all trades to like bump a skill once, like, and
right.
that would a unlock the skill again, and I would go interact with everybody who needed that skill, and then so I didn't want to do the save scummy stuff, but eventually I got to the point where it's like, okay, if I need a 15 and I only got 4 points or something, I definitely do not feel bad about changing my entire outfit to like best suit me. And it and it comes to a head, and I love that everything comes to a head because I've slowly collected all this drama stuff over the course of the game, and then finally you get ready to do karaoke night, and you're just like, and I just like you put on this purple bow tie with this like fishnet tank top and then like the kimono and you're just singing up there, you're just singing into a microphone this like the saddest song in the world.
Oh man, I really want to do the karaoke. I haven't done that in any of my playthroughs.
It's so good.
It is all the drama.
Oh man, I think there's a bonus for wearing all of them called like something dragon, and it's just like
oh that's interesting.
So like when you're wearing all 3 of them, like you get like a +1 bonus to drama. Oh, it was so good. So yeah.
So the interesting thing the reason that I brought up Kim's bomber jacket is the tag on it has +1 hand-eye coordination.
Great.
And then +1 Volta du Mar, which is like a sailing thing, I guess. But the implication is that people in this world all have like at least a couple of unique skills to them.
Interesting.
Which is interesting. Like maybe Harry has Esprit du Corps and
yes,
and like Kim has Volta du Mar, which I think is super. Yeah, which like again, just like that one little line like opens things up so much, which is like, oh man, just like does Kim have his totally own set of skills that like are talking to him in different ways, which again is super interesting. So it makes me really excited for like what would a tabletop RPG look like where maybe you have a spread of skills and you get to like bring some others in there, but some of them are unique to you or unique to other people. So I really hope that they do. There's rumors of like a TV series or something.
Oh my god, that would be.
I think a TV series set in this world could be really cool, especially because a lot of the things is like I don't necessarily think that Harry Dubois needs to like show up again, but there's just so much interesting stuff that's happening in this world that it feels so fully realized.
Yeah, it's so deep. Like and like the way they just like slowly dole out information, or like you play through the first, it's like you don't understand that there's a day system until you like try and figure out how to go to sleep the first day, and then like the second day things start unlocking, and they like slowly introduce you to this like day system, and some of the quests have the marker that's like, hey, you have to wait for a specific time to go and get this, and it's like, oh man, because I got the tooltip that says like you can read books to pass time, and I was like, why would you need to pass time? I'm running around like trying to like talk to everybody and figure everything out, but
and then you need to wait for Kim to come back with the
body or whatever.
Yeah, after you put the body in the bear fridge.
Yep. Yeah. It's crazy. And then yeah, I'm just the game. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I can't describe
I
it
I think
well
sort of
enough.
the last point for like on your list here of replay value. I do
Yeah,
definitely think that despite the story not being able to like the main
sure.
story to not be able to change, I do think that there is just again just the way the skill system works where like
Mm-hmm.
you literally don't get dialogue or certain thoughts
Mm-hmm.
if you don't have your skills a certain way. I think definitely means that if you just want to like do the story and like, do the who done it,
Yeah.
then you can probably get through it, play it once and then, oh, okay, you're done. Like
Yeah.
who did it isn't you're not going to be able to solve it early so far as I can
Sure.
tell.
Yeah,
I don't
I wanted to Google a speed run just to be like, what would that be
yeah,
like?
I don't think you can do it before day 3.
Interesting.
Although because the other side doesn't open until day 3, right?
Yes. Do you need
So
the
at the
other
very
side?
well, that's the only way I think that you
You
can
can
get
get
to
your
the
gun and your
island.
badge. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
to the island with the guy who did it.
Because you can like
Um,
get through. I guess you can't get through the Hardy Boys until you met with Everard, and the Hardy Boys aren't in that section of the diner until day 2.
yeah, so you
Yeah.
could. I think that the Hardy Boys could show up before. Yeah, you don't have to talk to Everett to get to the Hardy
I
Boys,
guess not.
but
Yeah.
you can't. But they don't show up till day 2,
Yeah.
and you can't get to the other island, and the road doesn't
Yeah.
open up until day 3. So I think that day 3 is the earliest you could get over there. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, and so I would also too like to see what a speed run of this looks like.
Yeah. What is that?
Um,
Yep.
there would have to be some save scumming involved,
Oh,
right?
sure.
But um,
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it has a quick save feature, so
yeah,
like
for that reason, yeah.
pretty much, yeah. Were
Yeah.
there
Mm.
did you have favorite? I guess I don't. Again, I don't know. Like, there's a lot of things that like what constitutes a side quest or a main quest, but like, are there narrative points that we haven't talked about that you like really enjoyed?
Um, I'm making my way through the horrific necktie. I really like the horrific
Uh,
necktie. He's like the only item that like talks to you throughout.
yes.
Um,
Yeah, the first time I interacted with like I'm trying to get to the egghead puzzle, and I'm like, because we haven't even talked about
Hardcore is a mega.
yeah, hardcore, hakatata. I'm like, what is going on with this guy? And like, I get to like what I think is the end of the conversation puzzle, and it's like, you should say something completely like obscene and like inane right now, but you just don't know what it is. And I was like, do I have to go through this with a necktie? Because the necktie seems pretty like obscene and and crazy at
Oh,
points.
interesting.
So I like put the necktie on. And I'm like, no, doesn't change anything. But like, yeah, the necktie talking to you is just
Yeah, sometimes the necktie will just give you a suggestion and there is a so the thing that sort of culminates with the necktie, if you get all these pieces in place,
uh-huh.
you get the blue liquid, the blue alcohol from the guy who is from those like drunks in the fishing village.
Oh, sure.
And if you have that plus the horrific necktie when you're in the shootout,
Mm.
you can the necktie tells you to like turn him into a Molotov cocktail
Oh
to
my god.
chuck at one of these guys, and that's
That's
what I'm
building up towards.
yeah, what I'm building up towards right now. If you have all those
Okay.
pieces in place and you're wearing the necktie during the event, like it's all these pieces that again, like you have to get into place, but it's like then you can turn the necktie into a Molotov cocktail. And
That is nuts. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm surprised that there's the necktie. I mean, I guess the necktie is a character in and of itself, but surprised it's the only article of clothing that talks to you.
I know. I know. I wonder if there was a larger but again, it makes me hopeful for a sequel where there's like
Oh,
some
sure.
other weird
Yeah.
some other weird things. But like the fact that the necktie also boosts your inland empire, which is sort of like your like imagination and your inner world. And
Yes.
so like of course the thing that boosts your your imagination would also be the only thing that hallucinates and you talk to
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Or the bird skull bolo tie. like also gives you Inland Empire, and it was like, oh,
Oh
did
yes.
I,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that was another moment I liked. Speaking of like the oh god, what's their Xena? This is their uh, crypt,
The
cryptozoology.
cryptozoologist.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
cryptozoologist. Like I don't know. I like you said about the narrative. Like it was definitely very heartfelt. Where it was like I eventually confronted the wife, and I was like, "Hey, if you don't believe this is real, like your husband is looking sick. Like you don't want to be palling around in the wets, in the wetlands. If he's got like this really bad cough, you got to tell him, you know, that
Mm.
you might or might not believe what happened to you as a kid. That inspires him to like go down this whole thing." Um, so I thought that was like again really
Yeah,
kind
their
of
story is so kind of
heartfelt.
sort of heartbreaking in a way where
Yeah,
like, their whole relationship is like built on the fact that she like lied on the first date to impress him,
yeah,
and it's like she can't ever go back on this deception. She can't reveal it. Yeah, a lot of like really interesting like
yeah.
human there's a lot of humanity and a lot of like
Hmm.
bittersweetness, which I think is really
But
powerful.
even the first time you press the like VO box to the second building, it was like the only thing besides like a bunch of empty call boxes. Like the only time you like get anything is like all of a sudden you hear waves crashing on the shoreline, and like you're reaching out to try and talk to some. Like it was so crazy, and like that's like
Yeah.
what you do on day one, and then like day three when I finally get access to the payphone on the western side of the
Oh man, yeah. Did you
island.
dial the number
I
with
just
the?
yeah, I just kept putting in coins and like dialing random numbers until it feels right. Because even you could do that even in not Everart's office, but the intermediary office, where you like dial a
Yeah.
random number. I was like, okay, let's do that once. But then I'm just like putting in dimes until I dial the right random number, and then you actually like reach out and like make the conversation, and somehow
Yeah,
like
talk to your ex-wife,
yeah,
and
yeah. Oh my god.
she's moved on,
Yep.
and yeah, brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah, brutal.
And then
But
like you're like taking like you take hit point damage like or you
yes, the longer
yeah
you talk, your morale keeps
like
going
keep
lower.
taking hits, or even in between you get the when you get your ledger you open up the back and you like pick up a note, like you have a heart attack or something like that,
Right.
and like you just wake up and you're like, what happened? And Kim's like, I don't know, you just passed down the middle of the road after grabbing this note or whatever. And I was like, I have to read that note, but I'm about to die.
Yeah, the
Oh
scene where you like remember like her leaving,
yeah,
told through like this magical realism, is really beautiful. It's really beautifully well done, with sort of like combining the sort of strange religion, the
yeah.
sort of like weird pseudo Christianity that they have with,
Oh my god.
yeah, with the
The moral
combining,
interns, or what are they called? The innocents?
yeah, the
I think are
innocence,
their religious
yeah.
symbols. Yeah. Oh my god. But they all have like superpowers and like existed. So it's like, what?
Well, supposedly,
Oh my god.
but yeah, it's very cool. I want to explore that world so much more, and I think that's the reason why I keep going back to it, is because every time you play the game with a slightly different configuration of skills, maybe you
Yeah.
get
You get something a little bit.
a tiny
Yeah.
bit more,
Yeah.
like, you get a tiny bit like a new detail that maybe you missed, and you're like, oh, like all these like little morsels, just trying to savor them all to learn as much as you can about these
Yeah. This whole
illnesses.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's I mean that's part of the reveal value too, is like I definitely would want to play again, because like you're right, you made different choices, you put points to different things.
Yeah.
Also like I think I think maybe it became a little bit too overwhelming, to like some of the things just went super deep, and like I don't, I think it really added to like the world building, but it definitely like was potentially too deep where I would have like a 3 hour session and it would have just been like a conversation with Joyce. I
Oh,
think that was
right.
maybe a little bit too much, and like on a second playthrough I don't have to go through all that again.
Yeah,
Like
a lot of it. You're like,
yeah,
okay, yes. And that's sort of like you almost have to get through your first long, and that maybe is the sort of in the final thoughts idea, like
yeah,
what prevents people from finishing this game. I think like once you finish it, each subsequent playthrough gets faster
Yeah.
because you know the answers. Like I know how to work the Hardy Boys.
Yes.
I know how to, I know how the couple of different ways to get into Everett's office.
Yep.
I know
Yep.
that
I'm
I know that I can talk to this person on day 3, or I know that I can
yeah. I have to wait.
you can get sort of fast at some of these things.
Yep.
And so then you can sort of experiment around. And so I definitely would recommend for people who maybe haven't finished their first one,
Gotta get to it. Yeah.
finish the first one. Even like don't even worry about like exploring every corner, because
Mm-hmm.
you're not gonna like get the whole way through in your first round.
Yep.
Just like get through the story, solve the mystery, and then then you can experiment and go like, okay, in this run let's choose all the racist options, or let's be
Let's not be the sorry cop.
yeah, let's try to be
Tequila
let's
Sunset.
be unapologetic. Yeah, let's be Tequila Sunset. This time I want to be Cop of the Apocalypse, or
Yes.
try to be the sort of like moral internist.
Yes.
Like try to be as like pro business as possible. Or what are the 4 ideologies? It's it's
Communism,
communard, fascist,
interesting.
moral intern,
There you go.
And there's one more. There's a fourth one.
Interesting. Okay.
But and apparently I haven't gotten here yet. Apparently there's like the political vision quest, which are new in the complete edition,
in the final,
which is some new stuff. So especially like for me, there's like some of that new content that like I don't know where that's gonna spring up. But
also for like replay value, I want to know what happens. Like, is it even possible to confront the gardener before you know that she's the lawyer? Like,
right, yeah.
It's like, wait, you were, and I think my character was getting there, but like, I don't know if I failed a check or something where it was like, wait, it's winter, and you were trimming plants in the something. Like, does this make sense? And like, I feel like my character like made some of those connections. But it wasn't until she was like, "Oh, I'm actually their attorney, and you can't talk to them right now," or something. I was like,
right,
oh.
yeah. I don't know. There's so many things where it's like with those not player-facing checks. Sometimes it's so powerful. Of like, there's stuff happening in the background where you don't know, and that's sometimes I think the fun of replaying it is like, what happened, or some of those, especially some of those red checks.
Yeah.
That, like catching the flowers on the roof of the building the first time.
Oh yes.
There. And like the first time I missed those completely, but the second time I got them, and it's like, oh shit, this is a clue.
What were the flowers?
They're dried flowers that aren't native this time of year, that are like in the breeze, and they're also a symbol of the like the Communist Party.
Oh, okay.
Communist revolutionaries.
Or like getting on top of the horse statue, like it's a pretty hard check to like readjust the antenna or something like that. Like if I put more points in that, it's
I didn't know you could get on top of the horse statue.
Oh man, that's what I was saying.
Now I gotta try to get on top of the horse statue.
That's that was like my bottleneck, because I was like trying to clear out the church so I can get the druggies off of the back inside to like start a club inside the church. But there's the woman like programming in there, and so I have to help her first. And so like trying to like hear into the void was like a big, like I said, perception bottleneck. So
sure,
it was like,
oh man,
how do I hear
creepy dude who lives in the
top my god, yes.
What the fuck is he? And like that's so, I think there's not enough magical realism in video games.
Yes.
Where like
they're like,
don't know, it's sometimes hard, especially with the unreliable narrator of Harry Dubois.
Yes.
What is real and what is fake? Are these things actually talking to you? Do you have superpowers? Like, are you, there was a while where I was going down the rabbit hole of like, is Harry one of the innocents?
Oh, yes. Oh my god. Again with the church, like you're like, you're like, are they even like, are innocents even human? And if not, can they like share? Like, there's that whole like religious door that just opens up when you like first start interacting with like the
Yeah.
church, where it was like, trying to bounce ideas off Kim of like, are they human, and like, can they share our experiences, and are they all good or something like that? And you're like, what is going on? And then I think,
Yeah.
so when I'm like doing the radio call to the warship, I'm like,
The
or like
warship.
or sometimes when you're just talking to someone, you're like, well, that's my power. Is like, I can, like, I hear all these voices inside of me are like telling me what to do, and then like people like give you funny looks, but it's like, wait, is Harry like
Right,
special?
because you as the player know that he is having these conversations inside of him, and you don't
Yes.
know, is this actually happening? Is it weird? Is there a meaningful difference between the two things?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's yes, it's very fun to sort of play with the magical realism, especially in a video game, which is a medium where anything can happen and you're in control, to be confronted by like the supernatural that you're, yeah, just all these feelings of unknown, and so many things just open up more questions
Yeah.
than answer, and that's a really satisfying place, I think, to be in. It again wants me to replay the game
Yeah.
because there's no sequel, or
Yeah.
because the book that the guy wrote a book in this world
Interesting.
before Disco Elysium, but it's only in like Polish, and so they're like, it's being translated into English, but it's not out yet.
That's
And
gonna
so
be
it's like,
super
oh God,
interesting.
I would read a novel in this world
Oh yeah.
in an instant,
I
just
mean,
because I want to learn more.
yeah. What the Pale was.
Yeah, what the Pale is.
Like, people cross
Where
it, but it's like this weird state of not being, and you're like, but people cross, like shipmen cross it, but they can only cross it so many times before they forget
and
who
they
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 are.
drive trucks through it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but that
yeah,
was another thing too. Is like, you dig into the Pale, and you're like, wait, like, one of the like side effects of driving through the Pale is forgetting who you were. So it's like, wait, how many times has Harry crossed the Pale? Like,
right.
Like,
Yeah,
is that's why he's like blacking out and forgetting who he is? Because he's crossed nothingness too many times?
yeah. Just the old yeah. There's so many good things.
Yeah.
I still think that, again, we sort of avoided talking about the opening to the mystery. So I think anyone who hasn't played it, it's
Yeah.
still definitely worth going through to get the story,
Oh, sure.
and even if not to get the story, just to like experience all the little details
Yeah.
of everything.
Well, that
There's
like,
so much cool stuff.
it's 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 not an like, I think that's what I liked about it, is like, it's not an open world game, but like, I feel like our conversation about it was like, the game is very open. Like,
Yeah,
the narrative is very open, and like the way you interact with things, and there's always going to be, in any good RPG, there's going to be like nooks and crannies that you might not have gotten, but even more so in this case was like, you
I
know
I
yeah.
I think bringing up the comparison to an open world game is really interesting, uh, because th- a lot of, like, you play Breath of the Wild, and Breath of the Wild is very beautiful,
Hmm.
but and even Breath of the Wild did this better than, say, let's say, like Red Dead Redemption.
Hmm.
Uh, Red Dead Redemption is very beautiful. There's a lot of stuff to do, but there's really only one way to progress the story.
Yeah,
The
much to the
side
yeah.
Yeah, the side quests don't necessarily, like, they don't necessarily push the main story forward, whereas Disco Elysium, like, the side quests aren't really truly side quests, because usually they're like providing more information for the mysteries, so like you do progress, everything progresses the overall like narrative forward.
Hmm.
So whereas Disco Elysium has one sort of story, there's a ton of different routes to progress it, as opposed to some open world games, which, like, there's a lot of corners of Breath of the Wild. They're like, when you're going for the Korok seeds, like,
Yeah,
there isn't going to be a story up at the top of the hill.
sure. But the reason I bring it up is like, I've had plenty of conversations where I'm talking about like Fallout, and it's like, oh, did you go to the church and find the creepy cult, irradiated cult under the church? And it's like, again, all these like small nooks and crannies over this giant open world game But instead, in Disco Elysium, it's like, hey, did you talk to this person and get this dialogue option that allowed you to figure out that like what the pail is, or
Yeah.
that or that Everard has a brother and his brother is the boss, and like, but they're and
Yeah, but they may or may not be the same person.
yeah, and he's like he
Yeah,
wants to better the place, but like he's just the shadiest motherfucker.
I think I think that the reason that it's really interesting comparing it to open world games is an open world game is usually a very big space that may or may not be full of things,
Uh-huh.
as opposed to like Disco Elysium's map is pretty small, but it's
Yep.
also pretty like dense in its
I was gonna
detail.
say.
And I think I sort of prefer that because
Hmm.
usually there was until like later in the game when you're really running around back and
Yeah.
forth. Like there weren't any sections where like I was just riding my horse because there was a
There's
sweeping
nothing
vista.
there.
Like it's sort of like Ocarina of Time versus Majora's Mask. Like Majora's
Yeah.
Mask because is a lot smaller, but because they were really limited by the technology, but they wanted
Hmm.
to go bigger, which meant that Clocktown is super dense with
Yes.
narrative. In the same way that Disco Elysium, its small map is really dense with narrative, and I really prefer that. I think sometimes to open world games because
Hmm.
I really like the storytelling. Where some of the open world games, some of the stories that you make are really unique because they're sort of like they're how you interact with a lot of these systems.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time, like then the systems reset, and whatever you've done doesn't necessarily carry on anywhere. It's like, oh, I had this really unique thing where I crushed these goblins with a boulder, but
Yeah.
that didn't really turn into a story where people reacted to the way that you crushed those goblins with the boulder.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I think that was. I think you hit it right on the head. Like, I remember one of the first words I used to describe it was just like dense, because I had spent like I might be doing a little bit of hyperbole here, but I'd spent like 4 or 5 hours, like almost without even leaving the freaking whirling rags.
the whirling rags, yeah.
Yeah, it's like,
There's so much stuff to look at there, like reading the newspaper, listening to the radio, and the
uh-huh.
radio's like giving you like all these locations that
Hmm.
sound vaguely French, but may or may not be, and you're trying to figure out not only like where you are just in the game, but also like is this our world? Like
Yeah.
is where am I? And which is what Harry is doing. The same thing, like
Yes.
who am I? Where am I?
Hmm.
And there's a lot to explore, but it all feels like it adds to your overall picture
Yes.
in some ways that I feel like other games can feel very again, it's like sort of density. I think
Yeah.
everyone wants to go bigger, where I think sometimes it's like let's go denser. Like
Yeah.
give me one room with
Yeah. With four people
if
in
you
it who you
yeah, if you
talk
can tell
to.
a
Yeah.
huge story in one room,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
what with all kinds of paths that branch but ultimately come back together, so it isn't
Sure.
like so overwhelming.
Well, cool. I think we've, if there's anything else that you want to talk
No,
about before our final
no,
thoughts, I think
go,
just kind of.
yeah. Go play it. Go have, go figure out what kind of cop you want to be.
What advice would you give someone who's going into it, like who's going into it fresh? Like, is there a specific way is there mistakes that you made along the way that you'd want them to avoid? What would you, or at least, or advise yourself if you were picking this up again for the
Yeah,
first time?
if I was picking it up again for the first time, I would advise myself don't worry about trying to solve it like an RPG.
Mm,
Don't worry about don't worry about solving it like a choose your own adventure. Even don't worry about like focus on the mystery, but don't worry about like trying to solve the story to try to get the best result, because the game doesn't have multiple endings.
mm,
It has one ending at least I think, with it has one ending as far as I know, but with multiple ways to get there. So just kind of enjoy the ride. Don't worry about saying the wrong thing. Just say the thing that you think is it's sort of like the same advice that we talk about in tabletop RPGs,
Yeah.
which is like just make an don't worry about making the right choice, make the interesting choice.
Yep.
And whatever you get to is probably, like whatever you get to is going to probably be really interesting, because the game it wants you to make those choices. They're there not as traps, but as
creation,
carrots.
or yeah.
They're not there to, if you insult this person, you're not going to offend them, and then they're going to like be mean to you in the future, or like you're not going to get the answer if you're not nice to people. Sometimes you have to be, sometimes you have to be mean. Sometimes you have to be, sometimes you have to upset people. Sometimes you have to, make people give up the secrets they don't want to, even if it makes them feel bad and hate you.
Yeah.
Like all of these choices they may not, there's no way to win. There's no like, you can't win an RPG. You just have to tell the story, and I would say, like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about winning. Just pick the most interesting choice in any given, in every given number, because the game is pretty forgiving. And again, like, you can't make Harry not be Harry. You can't make Harry you. You have to become Harry.
Yeah, I think that's what I would say. And like my final thoughts is like, I would, and I think I got a hint of that, like talking to Joyce for the first time, where Kim's like, "Hey, don't eat all your candy at once." I think that was actually really good advice for like the player. Was like, hey, just because, like, typically in an RPG, especially one when it's like dialogue heavy, is you want to exhaust someone's like narrative,
their
bubbles, their dialogue tree before you move on. And I would definitely advise against that, because like because there's like, there are a decent amount of characters, but you're probably going to talk to them more than once, so you don't
sometimes all the options won't be available until something. So sometimes it's like, save some for later, because then you might forget to come back to this person. They've unlocked a new, something else you've learned has sparked a new question for Harry, and you would have thought that you've exhausted that tree. Don't eat your candy all at once. I like that a lot.
Don't eat your candy all at once. Yeah, I thought so I feel like I definitely slowed down a lot when I was just trying to exhaust a dialogue tree, and I definitely just like, I mean, if that's the way you want to play, then go for it. I'm not gonna yuck your yum, but like, I definitely feel like you're going to be talking to these people multiple times, and this game is all about narrative in such a good way, as we've gushed over for the past 80 minutes. Like, the narrative is so good that you're going to be talking to these people again. So just don't get lost in the details, because I think that might be, why people might bounce off, is just you get lost in the details, and then it's hard to pick back up. If you set it down for a couple days, you forget where you are, and it's hard to pick it back up again. And I if there's anything I recommend when I'm playing video games, and I wish I had this is a good plug, but like, I have a games journal, and like, I don't use it a lot. Like, in a lot of games, it's just simple enough to remember, like, I need to collect this to get that. But there are a lot of points where I'm like, my next skill point needs to go into conceptualization, because that has like 3 checks associated with it. Oh,
interesting. So you have like an actual journal that you flip. That's smart.
Yeah. And I'm like, and there are enough branching stuff of like, okay, I need to go talk to this person to get this, and then do this in this order, and then the whole talk about like, I need to go put Kim to sleep so I can go talk to someone that I can't talk to while Kim's around.
So you can steal the boots.
So I can. That's specifically what I was talking about, Steven. You caught me. So I can go steal the boots off the body. But there's a whole quest that you can. I assume you can get lost in, because it's like, there are 5 pieces somewhere, and like I only know about 3 of them, so that's a whole thing.
You can find them all.
Definitely keep
Yeah.
a heavy amount of notes because the game.
Remember when like
Yeah.
games like Myst used to include in like the back half of their manual like pages for you to take
Yes.
notes?
Oh man, yes, definitely. Yeah, that's yeah. Highly recommend some note taking because you're in for a wild ride with this very deep
Yeah.
narrative RPG. So
Need a little detective notebook.
well, cool. Thank you, Stephen. I really enjoyed
Thank
talking to you
you.
about this.
Yeah, this was
I
great.
am
Thank
so
you. I've
excited.
been dying to talk to
I
somebody.
know, I know, and yeah, I don't know if it's probably, as always, this isn't the exhaustive end to the conversation. We'll probably be
Nope.
talking to people
Yep.
all along. So,
All right.
yeah, thank you, sir. And
Absolutely.
all right, that is it for this episode of the Friend Zone. I really enjoyed playing Disco Elysium, the Final Cut. I would recommend playing it on PC. I do appreciate the console port, but I did, like I said, I did feel that the controls were a little janky from point to point. And then I really enjoyed the VO for it. So that is definitely something I was looking forward to with the Final Cut. That is it for the Friend Zone. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy this content. If you do, follow, like, and subscribe to me on YouTube and Twitch so you can see more great content like this. I'll have links down below in the description. I want to thank Stephen again for taking the time to talk to me. Thanks again for watching. I hope you have a super day. I hope you have a super month. And I hope you have a super day. Bye!